Jake Allen stepped off the shuttle, his boots making a soft thud on the metal floor of the Galactic Academy's massive landing bay. It was his first time on this space station, and the vastness of it left him in awe. Hundreds of ships from all over the galaxy docked around him, their sleek forms glimmering under the artificial lights. Each one represented a civilization more advanced than Earth, and Jake felt very small in comparison. He adjusted the straps on his uniform, trying to look confident, though inside he felt nervous. He wasn't like the other cadets here. Most were from planets with technology that Earth couldn't even imagine. The cadets walked past him without a second glance, talking amongst themselves in different languages, their uniforms more decorated than his plain one. They were the galaxy's best, and Jake was just the Earthling among them. As he entered the Academy's main hall, his eyes were drawn to the holographic displays on the walls. They showed star systems Jake had only read about in books. His heart beat faster with excitement and fear. He had dreamed of being here for so long. But now that he was here, doubt started to creep in. Earth is just a backwater planet. He overheard one cadet say. Another laughed. They still use primitive tech. Right. What could they possibly teach us? Jake felt his stomach twist. These cadets didn't know what Earth was capable of. They didn't know the strength that came from a planet that had survived war, famine, and natural disasters without the help of advanced technology. But they would. He would prove them wrong. The cadets who had laughed at him in the shuttle had continued to ignore him, and Jake couldn't help but feel the sting. They were all too focused on themselves, too proud of their civilizations. They would learn what Earth was made of, even if it took everything he had taught at the Academy. There was a strict training schedule. The cadets were put through their paces, tested in every possible way physically, mentally, and tactically. Jake had heard rumors about how intense the training was, but he didn't care. He wasn't going to let anyone laugh at him anymore. His father had always said, "It's not about how big you are. It's about how much you fight for what you believe in." Jake held on to those words now more than ever. The first few days at the Academy were the hardest. Jake was put through endless tests. Some cadets had advanced tech to help them, but Jake had only his training from Earth. It was tough, but Jake kept his head down, pushed through the grueling exercises, and gave it his all. He began to notice that the other cadets were watching him. Some were curious, others looked at him like he was a joke. One day, during a training drill, Jake was paired with two other cadets, a Zorthian named Krell and a Nari named Mia. Both of them were strong, agile, and quick thinkers. Everything Jake wasn't, at least not yet. The exercise was simple, a mock battle against a simulated alien force. Jake had to prove himself to them. As soon as the drill began, Krell charged forward, his alien strength carrying him across the field with ease. Mia followed, using her quick reflexes to outmaneuver the simulation's enemies. Jake, on the other hand, hesitated. He wasn't fast, like Krell, or clever like Mia. But Jake had something they didn't: an Earth-born sense of determination. He remembered his father's lessons. Think smart, not just fast. Work with what you have. Jake waited for the right moment. When the simulation's enemies surrounded Krell and Mia, he darted forward, using his training to distract the enemy and create an opening for them. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. For the first time, the cadets looked at him not with mockery, but with respect. "That wasn't bad, Earthling," Krell said, his tone grudgingly impressed. "Maybe you have more to offer than we thought." Jake smiled, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. He still had to prove himself to everyone, including himself. Later that evening, Jake found himself alone in the cafeteria. He grabbed a tray and sat at a table in the corner, hoping to avoid attention. As he ate, he overheard some senior cadets sitting nearby. "Did you hear? Earth's sending a fleet to the Academy." "What a joke," one of them said, laughing. The others joined in, laughing loudly. "Yeah, right. Earth can't even keep up with the basics. They think they can send a fleet. Please. It'll be a waste of time," another cadet added. Jake clenched his fists under the table. Earth didn't have the advanced ships that other planets had, but Earth had something no one else did. He had to believe that. He finished his meal quickly and stood up. He had his work cut out for him, but he wouldn't let the Academy's mockery stop him. Earth would rise above their expectations. He would be the one to prove it. Jake Allen sat alone in his room late that evening, staring out the small window. At the stars, the lights of the Galactic Academy station flickered in the distance. But all he could focus on was the thought that had been haunting him since his arrival. He was an outsider here. His father's words echoed in his mind, reminding him that being from Earth didn't make him weak. It was just a different kind of strength. But the cadets here didn't see it that way. They had no idea what Earth had been through, what it had survived. Earth wasn't just a planet with outdated technology and a small military. It was a world built on grit and determination. They could laugh at him now, but Jake knew the truth. The Academy had already begun to test the cadets in ways he could barely keep up with. The physical challenges were brutal. The mental exams were even worse. Jake often felt like he was a step behind the others, struggling to catch up. But he wasn't giving up. No matter how difficult it was, he wouldn't let their laughter define him. Jake spent long hours in the training rooms, pushing himself harder than ever. His muscles ached, his mind was exhausted, but he refused to stop. He had something to prove. The Academy didn't believe in him, and neither did most of the other cadets. But he wasn't about to back down. The next day, during a particularly tough combat simulation, Jake was paired with the same cadets as before, Krell, the Zorthian, and Mia, the Inari. They both seemed to have no trouble at all. Krell's alien strength was on full display as he easily took down multiple enemies. With his bare hands, Mia was fast and agile, slipping through obstacles with ease. They were both natural-born fighters. But Jake was different. He didn't have their raw power or speed. But he had something else, Earth's resourcefulness. The simulation began, and immediately, Krell and Mia dashed into the fray, taking down enemy after enemy. But Jake didn't follow. Instead, he took a moment to study the environment, looking for ways to use the terrain to his advantage. He found a nearby stack of crates, then used them to create a trap. When the simulation's enemy soldiers came into range, Jake triggered the trap, catching several of them by surprise and giving Krell and Mia an opening. Mia, surprised but impressed, shot Jake a quick smile. "Not bad, Earthling. Not bad at all." Jake didn't respond. He simply focused on the next move. The enemy forces had regrouped, and now Jake knew the real test was about to begin. He could feel the eyes of the other cadets on him, and that made him even more determined. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for Earth. The simulation ended with Earth's team winning. It wasn't by a huge margin, but it was enough to surprise everyone. Even Krell and Mia, who had once laughed at Jake, were now giving him nods of respect. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. He hadn't yet done enough to prove himself. The real challenge was still ahead. Later that night, Jake received a strange message on his communicator. It was from Earth's government, encrypted with the highest security clearance. He hesitated for a moment, wondering if this was just another piece of bureaucracy. But when he opened it, he was stunned. "Jake Allen," the message began, "Earth has decided to send a fleet to the Galactic Academy. This fleet will consist of 1,000 to 100 ships fully equipped and ready for deployment. Your role in this mission is critical. You must ensure the success of this operation." Jake's heart raced as he read the message again. Earth was sending a fleet. It seemed impossible. The galaxy had always viewed Earth as weak, a planet with no real military power. Yet here was a message confirming that Earth was sending a massive fleet to the Academy. He stared at the screen for a long time, unsure of how to process what he had just learned. 1,000 to 100 ships. The scale of it was staggering. Jake didn't know how Earth had managed to put together such a fleet. But he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a show of force. This was Earth's chance to prove itself. The next morning, the news of Earth's fleet spread like wildfire throughout the Academy. Jake could hear the whispers in the corridors as he walked to his next training session. "Did you hear? Earth's sending a fleet," one cadet said, laughing. "Yeah, sure," another one replied. "What are they going to do with 1,000 to 100 ships?" The rest of the galaxy will just crush them. Jake felt the familiar sting of being an outsider, but he kept his head down. He wasn't here to win popularity contests. He was here to prove Earth's worth, and when the fleet arrived, everyone would see that Earth was not to be underestimated. Later that day, Jake overheard a conversation between two senior cadets. They were laughing about Earth's fleet, mocking the idea that such a primitive planet could pose a real threat. "I bet they don't even know how to use half the tech in those ships," one cadet said. "The fleet will be a joke." Jake clenched his fists. He knew this was just the beginning. Earth wasn't sending the fleet to make friends. They were sending it to show the galaxy that Earth was no longer just a joke. It was a force to be reckoned with. As the day wore on, Jake made a decision. He wasn't just going to let Earth's fleet prove something to the Academy. He was going to prove it himself. When Earth's fleet arrived, he would be ready, and the galaxy would know that Earth's cadet, Jake Allen, had a role to play in this new chapter of the galaxy's history. The days dragged on, and the whispers about Earth's fleet grew louder at the Academy. Jake could hear them everywhere, cadets talking in the halls, laughing behind his back. The mocking words were hard to ignore, but he didn't let them affect him. He had a mission, and it was bigger than any of them realized. Jake spent his days training, pushing himself harder than ever before. His body ached from the constant exercises, and his mind felt like it would explode from the pressure. But he couldn't stop. Every drill, every exercise was a step toward proving Earth's worth. One afternoon, during a strategy class, Jake found himself in a heated discussion with Krell and Mia, the two cadets who had once dismissed him as nothing more than a joke. The class was learning about the importance of using limited resources effectively, and while the other cadets discussed advanced tactics and high-tech strategies, Jake raised his hand. "I think it's more about the will to survive," Jake said, his voice firm. "No matter how advanced your weapons are, if you don't have the will to fight, you lose. Earth knows what it's like to fight with little and still come out on top." Krell raised an eyebrow, his alien features unreadable. "And what makes you think Earth is what it takes?" he asked, his voice tinged with mockery. Jake didn't flinch. "Because we've had to. We didn't have advanced fleets or weapons, but we survived. We made do with what we had, and that's what makes us strong." Mia looked at him, surprised. "You really believe that, don't you?" she asked. Jake nodded. "I do. And one day, the galaxy will see it too." The rest of the cadets fell silent, the mood in the room changing. Jake's words hung in the air, a challenge to everything they had learned about strength and warfare. He wasn't just talking about Earth's fleet. He was talking about Earth itself, the people, the history, the struggle. It was the kind of strength that couldn't be measured by technology or weapons alone. The next day, the Galactic Council held a meeting to discuss the arrival of Earth's fleet. The Academy's command had gathered to prepare for the incoming ships. While the senior officers were calm, most of the cadets were skeptical, unsure of what to expect. Jake overheard some of them talking again as he passed by. "This is going to be embarrassing. I can't believe Earth is actually sending a fleet. They're going to get destroyed." One cadet said, "Yeah, it's laughable. They don't even have the technology to compete with us." Another added. Jake ignored them, but he could feel his blood boil. He knew Earth wasn't just sending ships, they were sending a message. He just hoped the galaxy would be ready to hear it. The day of the fleet's arrival finally came. The entire Academy gathered in the Central Command Hall to witness it. The room was filled with cadets, commanders, and officers, all waiting for the show. But no one expected what happened next. The large view screen at the front of the hall flickered to life. The image showed the vastness of space, with hundreds of ships appearing in the distance. As the ships came closer, the crowd fell silent. The screen zoomed in, revealing Earth's fleet 1,200 ships, all fully armed. Their hulls sleek and powerful despite their older design. They weren't just ordinary ships, they were advanced in their own right, with weapons and technology that were far beyond what the galaxy had expected from Earth. The room was filled with gasps of shock. No one had expected so many ships. The fleet wasn't just a small gesture, it was a full-scale deployment. And it wasn't just a few ships from Earth. It was the whole of Earth's might, gathered and ready for anything. Jake stood at the back of the room, a small smile forming on his face. He wasn't the only one who had believed in Earth's strength. This was his moment, and it was bigger than he ever imagined. I told you Earth was not to be underestimated, Jake muttered to himself. The fleet's arrival was more than just a display of power. It was a symbol. It was proof that Earth wasn't just a minor player in the galaxy anymore. It was a force to be reckoned with. The mockery from the cadets and commanders was suddenly gone, replaced by wide-eyed disbelief. The Academy's command struggled to maintain control of the room as the fleet approached. There was no longer any doubt Earth was here to stay. Jake's communicator buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a message from Earth's High Command. Jake Allen, you are to report to the bridge immediately. The first mission begins. Now, you will lead the training exercises with the fleet. Jake's heart raced. This was it. His moment to show the galaxy that Earth was not just a joke, not just a small, insignificant planet. Earth was ready to take its place among the stars. And Jake Allen would be the one to lead the charge. As he made his way to the bridge, Jake couldn't help but think back to the cadets who had laughed at him. They were about to find out what Earth was capable of, and Jake would make sure they never laughed at Earth again. Jake walked through the long hallways of the Galactic Academy, his steps echoing on the polished floor. The message he had just received weighed heavily on his mind. He was about to face a new challenge, one that no one had expected. Earth's fleet had arrived, and with it, the opportunity to prove Earth's worth to the entire galaxy. The cadets had stopped laughing. Instead, there was nervousness in the air, the kind of tension that could only come from the realization that Earth was no longer just a backwater planet. It was a power to be reckoned with. But even though the fleet's arrival had shocked everyone, Jake knew the real test was just beginning. Jake entered the command center, where the high-ranking officers of the Academy stood in front of a large holographic display showing the positions of Earth's fleet in space. They were ready for something, but no one knew exactly what. The message Earth had sent with its fleet was clear. This was no ordinary show of force. The lead commander, General Arctis, a tall and imposing figure from the planet Tellan, turned to Jake as he entered. His expression was serious, but there was a hint of curiosity in his eyes. Cadet Allen, General Arctis said, his deep voice filling the room. You're the one who's been leading these training drills with Earth's ships, correct? Jake nodded, standing tall, despite the nervous flutter in his stomach. Yes, sir. I've been working with the fleet to prepare them for what's ahead. General Arctis studied him for a moment. Good. We're about to begin a simulation to see just what Earth's fleet is capable of. We'll be testing your fleet against a combined force from the Academy's best. Are you ready? Jake didn't hesitate. We're ready, sir. The general nodded and turned to the rest of the command team. Prepare the simulation. Let's see if Earth's fleet can live up to the hype. The room fell silent as the officers began to set up the simulation. On the large display, Jake could see the different battle zones being marked. The simulation would be a full-scale war game, with Earth's fleet facing off against the Academy's strongest ships. Jake's heart pounded. This was it. This was the moment to prove to the galaxy that Earth was more than just a joke. As the simulation began, Jake watched the holographic battlefield come to life. Earth's fleet moved into position, each ship gliding silently through the virtual space. The Academy's fleet, a mixture of sleek, advanced ships from various galactic civilizations, positioned themselves for the fight. Earth's fleet is outnumbered, Mia, one of Jake's fellow cadets, muttered under her breath. This will be easy. But Jake wasn't worried. He had seen the strength of Earth's fleet firsthand. The ships might not have been as fast or as sleek as some of the Academy's ships, but they were sturdy, reliable, and well-equipped. Most importantly, they had a crew that wasn't afraid to fight for their planet. They weren't going to give up without a fight. The first wave of the Academy's ships moved forward, their weapons primed and ready. But as they neared Earth's fleet, something unexpected happened. Earth's ships didn't immediately engage in combat. Instead, they spread out, forming a defensive perimeter. The Academy's fleet hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Earth wasn't playing by the usual rules. Jake's hand hovered over the controls. He knew that Earth's fleet had to be strategic. If they went on the offensive too quickly, they might be overwhelmed, but if they waited too long, the Academy would take advantage. The simulation's countdown clock ticked down. The Academy's ships fired first, but Earth's fleet quickly responded with evasive maneuvers, dodging and weaving in ways the Academy's forces hadn't anticipated. The Earth ships didn't have the same speed or agility, but they had something else: tactical intelligence. They used the environment to their advantage, hiding behind asteroids and debris fields, setting traps, and drawing the Academy's fleet into a fight on their own terms. Jake watched as the battle unfolded. Earth's fleet wasn't winning in terms of firepower, but they were holding their own. Every move Jake had taught them seemed to pay off. The Academy's fleet was struggling to keep up. The Earth ships were able to outthink their opponents, using clever tactics and teamwork to gain ground. It was a fight of wits, not just weapons. Jake couldn't help but smile as he watched the simulation unfold. For the first time, he saw the respect in the eyes of the Academy officers. They were beginning to understand what Earth was capable of. General Arctis stepped forward, his eyes locked on the display. "This is unexpected," he muttered. The battle raged on, but it was clear that Earth's fleet had the upper hand. Slowly, the Academy's ships began to fall back, realizing that they couldn't keep up with the unorthodox tactics of the Earth fleet. One by one, their ships were neutralized, and soon, the simulation ended with Earth's fleet standing strong. The room fell silent. For the first time since Earth's fleet had arrived, no one was laughing. No one was mocking. The respect was undeniable. General Arctis turned to Jake, his face serious but with a note of admiration. "Cadet Allen, you were right. Earth has something the galaxy doesn't fully understand. Your fleet's performance in this simulation was impressive." Jake felt a rush of pride. It wasn't just about the victory in the simulation, it was about proving to everyone that Earth wasn't weak. They were ready to take their place among the stars. And Jake knew this was only the beginning. The simulation had ended, but the impact of Earth's fleet's success echoed through the halls of the Galactic Academy. The cadets who had once laughed at Jake now treated him with a newfound respect. Whispers of Earth's unexpected victories spread through the station like wildfire. And for the first time, the Academy's leaders looked at Earth's cadet not with disdain, but with curiosity. Jake knew this was only the beginning. The victory in the simulation had been important, but it was just a small piece of what Earth needed to prove. Now, the Academy would begin to understand what Earth was capable of, and Jake had to make sure that the message was loud and clear. For the next few days, Jake was busier than ever. He worked with the Earth fleet's commanders, preparing them for the next stage. The fleet was strong, but it still needed to be fully integrated into the larger galactic community. Jake's task was to help them navigate the political and strategic complexities that came with being part of a galaxy full of different species and power struggles. While Jake worked with the fleet, the Academy continued its regular training. But there was a change in the air. The cadets who had once ignored Jake now sought him out, eager to learn from him. They wanted to know how Earth had managed to turn the tide of the simulation. How had a fleet of seemingly outdated ships taken down the advanced forces of the Academy? How had Earth, a planet once thought to be insignificant, become a power to be reckoned with? At first, Jake hesitated to speak to them. He had his doubts. He had always been an outsider, and part of him wondered if this sudden respect would last. But when Krell, the Zorthian, approached him one morning, Jake knew he couldn't turn his back on the chance to help. "Earth's tactics," Krell said. Standing next to Jake as they watched a training exercise, they were unlike anything we've seen before. "I've been studying Earth's history, and it's clear that your people don't rely on just technology. You rely on ingenuity and survival. I want to know more about that." Jake raised an eyebrow. "You want to learn from me?" he asked. Surprised, Krell nodded. "Your fleet doesn't have the technology of the others, but it is something better. It is purpose. We could all learn from that." Jake felt a small sense of pride. He had never imagined a Zorthian alien with a species known for its raw strength and fierce combat skills would be interested in learning from him. But Jake wasn't foolish enough to think it was only respect. Krell had his own reasons for seeking knowledge. "I'm happy to help," Jake said. "But just remember, it's not about the technology, it's about the people." Earth's fleet succeeded because they fight for something bigger than themselves. They fight for their planet, their future. You can't teach that in a classroom. Krell seemed to take Jake's words to heart. He stood there for a moment, processing the message. Then, with a determined look, he nodded. "I understand. We have something to learn from Earth." As the days passed, Jake's influence within the academy continued to grow. The other cadets, who had once mocked him, now sought his guidance. They asked about Earth's strategies, its survival stories, and its battles both won and lost. Jake began to realize that Earth's true strength didn't lie in its ships or weapons. It lay in the people who had fought to survive against overwhelming odds. People who refused to give up no matter how dire the situation. But even as Jake worked to bridge the gap between Earth and the rest of the galaxy, a new challenge loomed on the horizon. The Galactic Council had been watching the events unfold at the Academy, and they were beginning to question what Earth's presence meant for the balance of power in the galaxy. Jake received an unexpected message from the Galactic Council's representative, an elderly Zarnian named High Chancellor Vok. The message was brief, but its meaning was clear. "Cadet Allen," the message began, "we would like to invite you to participate in an official summit with the Galactic Council. The presence of Earth's fleet has raised many questions. It is time to address these concerns." Jake knew this was a turning point. The Galactic Council represented the most powerful entities in the galaxy, and if Earth's place in the galaxy was to be secured, this summit would be crucial. Jake had no idea what the Council's true intentions were, but he knew he had to be ready for anything. He made his way to the Council's meeting room, where he was greeted by a group of high-ranking officers and diplomats from across the galaxy. They were all seated around a large, circular table, their eyes fixed on Jake. The room was filled with an air of anticipation, as if they were all waiting for him to say something that would change everything. High Chancellor Vok, the leader of the Council, spoke first. "Cadet Allen, we have been watching Earth's progress with great interest. Your fleet's unexpected victory in the simulation was impressive. But now, we must discuss what this means for the future of the galaxy. Earth is a planet with limited resources. Your fleet may have surprised us, but can it sustain this power? Can Earth maintain its position among the stars?" Jake stood tall, his heart beating fast. But he kept his voice steady. "Earth's strength comes not from its resources or its technology, but from its people. We have learned to survive, and we will continue to fight for our place in this galaxy. Earth isn't here to conquer, it's here to coexist. But we will never back down when our future is at stake." The room fell silent. Jake's words hung in the air, a challenge to everything the Galactic Council had assumed about Earth. For the first time, the Council members looked at him not as a cadet from a weak planet, but as a representative of a people who had fought for their survival. The summit was far from over, but Jake knew one thing for certain. Earth's place in the galaxy was no longer in question. Earth had proven it could survive. Now, it was time to show the galaxy that it could thrive. The summit with the Galactic Council was just the beginning of what Jake knew would be a long and difficult journey. The Council's members had listened to his words, but there was still a lingering doubt in the air. Earth was still considered a planet of limited resources, and many of the galactic leaders saw it as a curiosity rather than a serious threat. But Jake was determined to change their view. Earth's presence was not just about power, it was about proving their worth, about showing that Earth belonged among the stars. In the days that followed the summit, Jake found himself walking through the Academy's halls with a sense of purpose. The cadets who had once mocked him now treated him with respect. The Academy's training sessions had become more intense, but Jake welcomed the challenge. It was the only way to show the galaxy that Earth was not here to play games, it was here to stay. Jake spent most of his time working with the Earth fleet, pushing them to be more than just soldiers. He taught them to think beyond the traditional rules of combat, using their resourcefulness to outsmart and outmaneuver their opponents. They may have had fewer ships, But they had something the other fleets didn't: human ingenuity and determination. And Jake was determined to make sure that every cadet in the academy and every leader in the galaxy understood that. One morning, as Jake was preparing for another training exercise, he received a message from General Arctis. The academy was holding a special event, a live demonstration of each fleet's capabilities. Earth's fleet would be pitted against several other forces, including a few of the academy's best trained ships. It was a chance to showcase Earth's abilities, but Jake knew that it would also be a test. The galaxy was watching, and Earth couldn't afford to fail. Jake knew this wasn't just about a training exercise. This was a statement. Earth's fleet was more than just a symbol. It was a force to be reckoned with. But he also understood that this demonstration would be a turning point. If they failed, the doubts about Earth's place in the galaxy would only grow stronger. But if they succeeded, they would prove, once and for all, that Earth belonged among the galaxy's greatest powers. The day of the demonstration arrived, and the entire academy gathered in the grand arena, which had been transformed into a large battle simulation zone. The viewing platform was filled with cadets, instructors, and officials from various galactic species, all eager to see how Earth's fleet would perform under pressure. The tension in the air was thick, and Jake could feel the weight of the moment on his shoulders. As the simulation began, the fleets took their positions, and the battle unfolded before the audience's eyes. Earth's ships moved into position, their tactics calm and calculated. They had been trained to fight smart, not just hard, and Jake knew this was their advantage. The other fleets, more advanced in technology, were quick to engage. But Earth's fleet wasn't rushing in. They waited for the right moment, using the terrain of the simulation field to hide and ambush their opponents. It was the same strategy Jake had used in the Academy's earlier exercises, and it was working again. As the simulation progressed, the Academy's ships began to show signs of frustration. Earth's fleet was outmaneuvering them at every turn, using their limited resources to gain the upper hand. The other fleets tried to push forward, but the Earth fleet always found a way to slip through their defenses. Jake couldn't help but smile as he watched the simulation unfold. It was exactly what he had trained them for. But the real test came when the last wave of the Academy's forces, led by one of their best ships, launched a full-scale assault. Earth's fleet was outnumbered, and it seemed like victory was just out of reach. But Jake wasn't worried. He had one final trick up his sleeve. As the enemy closed in, Jake's fleet executed a maneuver that none of the other fleets had expected. They activated a series of decoys, holographic ships that confused the enemy's targeting systems. With the Academy's forces distracted, Earth's fleet launched a surprise counterattack, striking with precision and taking down several of the enemy ships. The simulation ended with Earth's fleet victorious. The other fleets had been forced to retreat, and the audience sat in stunned silence. For the first time in a long time, Jake saw the respect in the eyes of the other cadets and leaders. Earth had done the impossible. They had not only held their ground, but had won the battle through sheer will and strategy. General Arctis stepped forward, his voice booming over the arena. Earth's fleet has proven itself today. Their tactics, their strength, and their courage are unmatched. We have underestimated them for too long. Jake stood tall, his heart swelling with pride. The victory was not just his, it was Earth's. It was a victory for every person on Earth who had ever faced hardship, for every individual who had fought against the odds and come out stronger. Earth wasn't just a participant in the galaxy's future, it was a leader. As the crowd began to applaud, Jake turned to face his fleet. They had worked hard for this moment, and they had earned their place among the stars. The galaxy had just witnessed Earth's strength, and Jake knew this was only the beginning. In the days that followed, the Galactic Academy's attitude toward Earth changed. The cadets who had once laughed at Jake now looked up to him as a leader. Earth's fleet became a respected force in the galaxy, and Jake's role in that success was undeniable. He had shown the galaxy that Earth was more than just a planet, it was a symbol of hope, resilience, and determination. Earth's future was bright, and Jake knew that he would be there to help lead it. The days after the simulation victory were a whirlwind for Jake. Earth's fleet had proven its worth on the battlefield, but the hard work was far from over. With each passing day, Earth's presence in the galaxy grew stronger. The Galactic Academy was no longer just a school for the elite. It was now a place where Earth was being recognized for its strength and strategy. Jake spent most of his time working with the fleet, continuing to train and refine their tactics. He knew that the galaxy's leaders were still watching, wondering if Earth's victory was a fluke or a sign of things to come. But Jake wasn't concerned about their doubts anymore. He had seen firsthand what Earth was capable of, and now the rest of the galaxy was beginning to see it too. One afternoon, Jake was called to a meeting with General Arctis and several high-ranking officials from the Galactic Academy. He entered the room with a sense of purpose. The respect he had earned through his hard work and the victory of the fleet had earned him a seat at the table with some of the most powerful people in the galaxy. Cadet Allen, General Arctis began, his tone more serious than usual. The success of Earth's fleet has sparked a new conversation in the Galactic Council. There are talks about Earth's future in this galaxy and your role in that future. Jake listened carefully, trying to hide the excitement that rose within him for months. He had fought to prove Earth's place in the galaxy. Now it seemed that the hard work was paying off. You've shown us that Earth is something special. General Arctis continued, not just strength, but resilience, strategy, and a will to survive that we didn't expect. But there's still one question that remains: what will Earth do? With its newfound power, Jake knew the answer. We will fight for our place. We will prove that we're not just a planet to be overlooked. We'll work with others, learn from them, and contribute to the greater good of the galaxy. But we will never back down. Earth's future is one where we stand side by side with the rest of the galaxy, not beneath it. General Arctis nodded. Thoughtfully, the Academy is prepared to help Earth take that next step. But you must understand, this will require more than just military power. It will require diplomacy, trust, and most importantly, unity. Jake had never been one to shy away from challenges. He had grown up on Earth, where the people faced challenges every day, from natural disasters to wars. It was the strength of Earth's people that had gotten them through those struggles. And it was that same strength that would guide them in the galaxy. I understand, Jake said, and I believe Earth is ready. We've already made great strides, but we need to continue to prove ourselves. We can't afford to be complacent. The meeting ended with a sense of resolve. Earth's path forward would not be easy, but Jake was more determined than ever. The victory of the fleet was just the beginning. There was a whole galaxy out there, and Earth was going to find its place in it. A few days later, Jake was given a special assignment. The Galactic Council had invited him to participate in a peace summit between several rival factions in the galaxy. It was a rare opportunity for Earth to demonstrate its ability to handle diplomacy as well as combat. Jake knew that this would be a test unlike any other. The galaxy's leaders were looking for a reason to trust Earth, and Jake had to make sure they saw it. When the day of the summit arrived, Jake stood in front of the large round table where representatives from various galactic factions were already seated. He was nervous, but he didn't let it show. This was his moment to show that Earth was more than just a powerful fleet. It was a planet capable of leadership, of peace. As he took his seat, the room fell silent. The eyes of the galaxy were on him. The discussions began, and it wasn't long before the tensions between the factions became clear. Old grudges, misunderstandings, and distrust had kept them at odds for centuries. Jake listened carefully, knowing that this wasn't about winning a fight, it was about finding common ground for ours. The discussions continued, with little progress. But Jake knew that diplomacy wasn't just about words, it was about understanding. He spoke up, his voice calm but steady. I've seen what this galaxy is capable of when it works together, Jake said. I've seen planets come together in times of need, when all hope seemed lost. Earth is a young planet, and we've made our fair share of mistakes. But we've learned that the only way to survive in this galaxy is by standing together. Not as enemies, but as allies. The room was silent for a moment, and then one of the representatives from the Zorthian species spoke. You're right. We've been fighting for so long. We've forgotten what it's like to work together." The conversation shifted, and for the first time in the summit, there was a glimmer of hope. The factions began to listen to each other, exchanging ideas, and looking for ways to build bridges rather than walls. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. By the end of the summit, an agreement was reached, an alliance between the factions, with Earth as a key member. Jake couldn't help but smile. It was a victory, not in battle, but in the way that Earth had proven it could contribute to peace. As the summit concluded, Jake stood up to leave. The representatives from the other factions nodded at him, acknowledging the role he had played in the talks. It was a small victory, but it was a significant one. Jake had come to the Galactic Academy as an outsider, laughed at, and underestimated. But now, he had shown the galaxy that Earth wasn't just a planet, it was a force for good. Capable of both combat and diplomacy, the future was bright, and Earth's place in the galaxy was no longer in question.